you want to just talk about the Abyss
Yeah.
first?
Pretty pretty like, I don't know what the right. I mean, it's longer, and also I feel like has a very strong sense of, I don't know, like the drama in it just seems a little bit, it's hit a little bit harder for whatever reason. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because just spending more time with the characters helped.
Well, you know what I was
But
thinking about was that more that a bigger movie allows them to sink into smaller moments, where everything in a short movie had to be broad and get straight to the point. You can really soak in the emotions a lot more in this
yeah,
movie, and I think it's it feels like an actual movie. Honestly, I was blown away by The Abyss. I
yeah,
thought it was fantastic. I think other movies that have been this length have felt like a collection of scenes, right?
right, yeah,
They felt very discrete. Sometimes literally they've been just a collection of shorter
mm-hmm.
movies put together into one long movie.
Yeah,
This feels so cohesive, and the shots and the scenes flow from one another so well, so well. It feels effortless, and this is a first movie from this director.
yeah. That is pretty crazy. This is like one of the definitely one of the better things we watched this year, and I would say even one of the better things that we've watched. Uh, Overall, I don't know about that, but
I might say it. I thought it was
it's quite good.
fantastic.
Um, it's it is definitely like a melodrama.
Yeah,
Like, it is definitely a sort of like very, a lot happens in a very short amount of time. Still,
yeah. This is another deadly love triangle movie.
right? But in a very different way from Ramona.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Certainly. Roughly, the movie is that there is this woman who meets this guy. She's a piano teacher. Her name is Magda Vang. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's Dutch.
Sure,
Or no,
Magda.
it's not Dutch. It's Danish. Jesus Christ. So in a tram car in Copenhagen, she meets this guy named Knud Svein, and they fall in love. And he invites her to his vicarage, which I assume is like some kind of cottage or something like that.
Well, I think it's like it's specifically like a religious thing
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I
where
think I read somewhere
a
that he's a
vicar lives.
pastor's son. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. So they're kind of like hoity-toity, but she loves them, but they're kind of like off. He's like off doing business, and she's just kind of sitting there alone.
I kind of got the impression they were off like at church, but I could be wrong.
Oh, and she didn't come with him.
Yeah. But
uh,
there is definitely this sort of thing where like Knud meets Magda on the tram,
yeah.
and it's just immediately like, ugh, a woman. Um, and then but like they get along, and it's like he invites her to the cottage, and she's like, great, I'll go.
Yeah.
But I feel like I kind of get the impression like once she gets there, she's like, oh, like this family is kind of a
Kind of not
little,
my scene.
yeah, like a little square for me, maybe. And so they leave, and she's just stuck at the house alone, and she sees a flyer for the circus is in town,
Mm-hmm.
the traveling circus, and she's like, love the circus, gotta go to the circus. And so she shows the flyer to Knud when he gets back, and he's like, circus, please. We're a morally upstanding family. We don't go to circuses. But she convinces him to go. She's like, come on, like for me, let's go to the circus. And Knud is dragged to the circus, where Magda starts dancing with some of the dancers, including this cowboy, circus cowboy fella named Rudolph. And Knud is not happy about that, so Knud is like, we're leaving. We're going home So they go
There's a
home.
lot of jealousy in this movie.
Yeah, they go home, but then Rudolph follows them and kind of gets into a fight with Canute outside the house.
Oh yeah, Canute kind of like says like, "Get out of here!"
Yeah.
Like, beat it, clown.
But so then Magda goes upstairs to her room, and Rudolph climbs up through the window.
Yeah.
And they just kind of start making out, just right there, which is all right, okay. And so then she runs away with Rudolph to join the circus.
She's so taken with him and so opposite of taken with this square guy.
Yeah. And it's at the circus where there's this long, like, dance centerpiece to the film, which is the reason why it got censored in so many other countries.
Yes.
And I'd read that beforehand that like this movie was censored in Norway, I think, and Sweden.
The U.S. too.
Because of the erotic content. And I was like, all right, 1910, let's see what this is. And I was like, oh no, this is pretty risque. It was far more risque than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean it's so the dance is portrayed from like a side view, and you're seeing the stage that they're performing some kind of circus show, vaudeville type show, and Magda kind of ties up Rudolph with a lasso. She grabs his lasso, she lassos him, and then ties him up, and then she just kind of like dances around him and kind of like grinds on him.
Yeah.
And it goes on for a good while, and yeah, it's quite racy. It's
yeah. At least I mean, much more so than I would expect from any movie. Certainly any American movie, probably before like the 1960s.
Yeah. I mean, you know how these Europeans are.
Yeah, that's true.
I saw so a lot of people were talking about the actress who plays Magda, Asta Nielsen, and her kind of just general eroticism. I think that she got locked into roles in this genre of erotic melodramas, but just kind of got to be this kind of figure anyway. In there was a film critic in 1924 who was talking about her, and she said Asta Nielsen's spiritualized eroticism is demonically dangerous since it works at a distance through all her clothes.
Whoa.
Which more or less describes what's going on here.
Yeah, pretty much. I love the language of that sentence. I was reading up a little bit about Asta Nielsen, and Asta Nielsen seems like she was very cool. She later married the director of this movie, Urban Gad.
He's just an urban gad.
Yeah. And they
Gad about town.
They moved to Germany a few years after this and co-founded a film studio there, which she kept making films until the early 1930s, at which point she retired kind of to do more theater. That was about when sound was starting to kick off. And then, it being the 1930s in Germany, Hitler and Goebbels tried to make a deal with her to make propaganda films, but she instead left Germany and gave a bunch of money to help Jews escape the Holocaust.
I was so relieved to read that because I was just thinking so much about D.W. Griffith and how he's garbage, and thinking, is anyone even cool from back then? Is anyone a good person from the olden times? And it turns out that she is. Asta Nielsen.
Yeah, she's the only one.
Well, to finish up the summary here, basically there's like a lot of back and forth of she can't really decide which man she wants. I guess I should finish up that scene actually, which is that Rudolph starts macking on this other
Dancer
performer.
Yeah.
And she's just like, Where'd this come from? You don't just randomly kiss people. That doesn't sound like you.
Even though that is
And
100% what he did when they met. So
yeah. So she gets all mad. She attacks the other dancer while she's on stage, and there's a whole big fight. And she and Rudolph end up getting kicked out of the circus.
right, yeah,
And
just trying to make lives for themselves at like the Artists Hotel, which I guess was a thing in Denmark. At which point they run into Knud again by, I think the intertitle says like a chance encounter, or like a coincidence or something.
yeah.
With like running to each other again. And then she's gonna leave with Knud, but then Rudolph like seduces her again, kind of, where it's just like, no, don't leave. I must have you.
Yeah, she literally is convinced by the straight-edged guy and like packs her bags and is about to go. Then Rudolph just convinces her, starts smooching her again, and she's like, I can't leave you, you know?
I mean, this is kind of a love triangle movie, but it is very much a movie about a woman who's kind of caught up in an abusive relationship, which is more of a, I don't know, it's like a more complex topic, I guess, than I expected from a movie from this time period.
Yeah, and I think, considering just the dance that we talked about earlier and the kind of agency that she is trying to show in this situation, I think that it gives, for a movie of this time, it gives a woman a lot of interiority and a lot of sexual autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Which is pretty cool.
I kind of got the impression, I might be somewhat projecting, of just like old timiness onto this, that Knud is sort of definitely meant to be taken as like the good, morally upstanding guy that she kind of should be with.
I think the movie understands her running away from him, though.
Yes, and I also, it's the sort of thing where it's like neither of these two men are a good like romantic partner for this woman.
Yeah.
Like, just Magda just wants to dance and like be happy, and neither of them really are willing to let her do that. And I'm just like, just let Magda dance. That's all she wants.
Yeah. And you can see that, like, the way we're talking about this is a very complex movie, and a very, like, emotionally complex movie for this time, I would say.
Yeah. And it ends kind of in a not terribly happy way. I'm trying to remember the specifics of it.
Well, so after they're kicked out of the circus, they're trying to scrape by just doing performances out in the world. It seems to be implied that Rudolph is like drinking a lot, and she is having to help support that as well. She's playing piano in a park, and Rudolph's kind of hanging out there. And she's performing with a band for basically like an outdoor cafe, and it ends up being that oh god, what's his name? Knud once again randomly appears, and he sees her playing, and he gives the waiter a little card that says, it's an old friend. Come and meet me at this hotel room, and we can talk. And for a second, she kind of just blows it off. She doesn't really want to do it. I was reading a summary somewhere else, and it was saying that maybe the implication was that she thought that she was being like solicited for prostitution, and she decided she didn't want to do that. But then Rudolph like convinced her to go. So she goes kind of reluctantly. She goes into the hotel room and she sees Knud there, and she basically is like, "Great to see you. Please get me out of all of this," you know?
There's also, I thought there was an implication in the scene in like the cafe too, that Rudolph was like drinking up a big bill, and
Oh yeah,
Magda
yeah.
ended up having to pay for it.
Right.
Um,
Oh, is that why he was convincing her to go talk to the guy? Maybe.
I think
Um,
so. I think that was sort of part of it.
and Rudolph kind of follows her like he tends to do, into the room after she's been there for a second. She's getting ready to run away with Canute. Rudolph breaks in, sees Canute there, and then pushes him out of the room, and basically starts attacking Magda. And she, it's a pretty harrowing scene.
It is. It was like I was again. A lot of things surprised me about this movie, but that too is like this is intense and kind of scary and upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I mean, uh, if anybody is thinking of watching this and doesn't want to see something that kind of looks like a sexual assault, then I wouldn't. um, she ends up stabbing him with a knife that was on the table, and to get out of the confrontation. It was someone who she felt love for, and so after she stabs him, she cries over the corpse. The police arrive, and she's taken away. She has this really dead-eyed look on her face, like she's just exhausted and just done with everything.
And then in a
And
moment of awfully timed, unintentional comedy, the Danish word for end appears on screen. Unfortunately for any English speaking audience members, the Danish word for end is slut. Spelled the same
yes,
way. And so
yes.
I saw that and I was like, whoa.
I went to Denmark 2 years ago, and I remember giggling at that when I saw the word "end" in Denmark, and it exited my brain, and then all again once I saw this movie and it said "slut" at the
I mean,
end.
it's written in English right below it, so I quickly figured out what was going on, and
Yeah,
I checked to make sure, but at the same time I was just like, oh, didn't that okay? That's a way to end the movie. Jesus,
um,
a little harsh.
but yeah, great film. I think the movie itself has a lot of sympathy for her, even though the wider culture probably would look down on the character in the movie, and that's probably indicated by the one of the English titles of this movie is The Abyss. There's another English title of this movie which is The Woman Always Pays,
Mm.
which, I mean, I guess if I'm being really charitable, it's about her paying for Rudolph at the place. But I'm thinking that the idea is that
Yeah,
she is paying the price for her ways of, I don't know, infidelity and that kind of thing.
I mean, I think she's the intent of the movie is to kind of portray her as like free spirited, but almost. I don't necessarily think the movie is like trying to blame too much of her predicament on that,
I
but
don't
there
think so.
is
Yeah.
a little bit of that sort of like she's too wild, like
Yeah, it's a
she
kind of
can
karmic justice ending
um
for, someone who goes against the social order needs to be punished in a story.
yeah. um but I think like you said, it affords her, I think, a lot more like agency than I think a lot of other films from this time period are giving female characters.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't know. I there's a palpable difference in the way that this character kind of behaves and is portrayed.
Yes. And Asta Nielsen, I think this was either her first movie or one of her early movies, and she was kind of renowned for her very subtle acting, which you can really feel in this movie. Um, uh, they there's a lot of complicated emotions going on in this film, and I think she does a great job with it. It's a lot more subdued than this kind of broad pantomiming that's happening in a lot of silent films.
Yeah, yeah. It is still, I mean, by any sort of modern standard, it is still very broad and pantomimey, but definitely for this time period, it's much more subdued and much better in general.